you have to keep in mind that my background, the last thing I thought about was just being an artist, because I didn't think I could make it. I was no Picasso, but I thought of the next best thing. When I was in high school in Brooklyn, I would remember I was working behind a cold cut counter, and I was bored as hell doing that, and a small grocery store. And it was so goddamn boring. At one point, I just said, I gotta change. I gotta do something. I can't continue to this for the rest of my life. So I decided to go to the next best thing was commercial art.
My best word to describe Tony's work is timeless.
He became the master of it.
It's timeless. I can't tell when he did it.
His steady hand, I mean, it really was almost otherworldly that someone just with their own hand could create, such perfect lines and balance.
I would equate him as a master on the same plane as, Glazer and Quast.
I'm Antonio Di Spigna. I'm a graphic communications designer. I've been in the business now for more than 50 years. I've been teaching at Pratt for 50 years. Nobody in my family was an art student or oriented or design oriented. And I wasn't quite sure what, I had my doubts whether I would be able to make it. So I went to New York City Community College because they had a reasonable fee. If I remember correctly, at that time, they charged, I paid $400 a year. Okay, so that tells you an awful lot. I originally wanted to go to Pratt Institute, but I couldn't afford it. So I enrolled in an evening department at the school. It was a good program. I still remember some of the teachers there fondly, because they had a lot of influence in my development. And this school was situated near the Brooklyn Navy Yards. As a matter of fact, I had to come from South Brooklyn, take a bus to here, to the Myrtle Avenue overhang station, and take a train way out to near the Brooklyn Navy Yard, where this department, the communication design, it was called the Commercial Art Department then. I knew that Tom Carnese had also gone to this school, and I wanted to be, the next Cerebral Bound or the next Tom Carnese. That would be great. But more important, I wasn't thinking so much of the money that they would pay, but I was thinking of what better to learn one's craft than learning from the masters. It was a 2 years program then. So after I left the program, I decided to go on to Pratt Institute. And on graduating from Pratt, working 2 or 3 places that lasted a couple of weeks or a month, until I finally got an interview with Tom Carnese, who hired me after I made my portfolio presentation. When I got that job, working with Tom and Herb, it was to me the beginning of my real education. Our studio did everything from designing stamps to advertising campaigns to product design, editorial design, corporate identity, you name it, whatever was out there to be solved, we solved it. What was unique about the Lubalin Studio, he would spend a lot of time to having his assistants making things beautiful, done right. He was so detailed in what he wanted in terms of kerning and redrawing characters if necessary to make things work. Good enough was never a criteria at that studio.
The iconic logos of the day, from the 13 logo to the identity for the World Trade Center, to the legs logo for the packaging for the women's pantyhose. When you look at those logos, those pieces, you can appreciate them because they tell a story, and that's why we still respect and appreciate them, because they were with our parents or our parents' parents, or you played with the packaging because it was an egg. And so as a result of those things, they mean something to us. It's bigger than graphic design. It's more about creating things that became staples in people's lives, everybody.
The Channel 13 logo, that one's interesting to me because I grew up here in New York, and Channel 13 was the local public station, and we watched it. It was very in the background of your life.
This concludes our broadcast day on Channel 13 WNET.
As a young person, I didn't even understand that there was a concept of typography, but I do remember distinctly, again, seeing this, as I know now, is a logotype, but seeing the I and the R of 13, and so to me, I guess as a young person, it just struck me, and I guess that was the beginnings of, appreciating design.
I love Imported from Brooklyn. That really spoke to me when I saw it at the Type Directors Club. I'd never seen that piece before, and I've been looking at and admiring Tony's work for 20 years now. But there were so many new pieces there at the Type Directors Club show, and that one was the one. I love Brooklyn, and he was able to solve that 40 years ago, which again, you can't tell, it's timeless.
Imported from Brooklyn was done for an advertising agency. An art director calls me up and tells me that he has this 3-word headline that he wants to do in Spencerian. And he said that it was for an advertising campaign. It's one of my favorite as well. I loved it because of the copy, Imported from Brooklyn, Well, I tell people that I was born in South Italy and grew up in South Brooklyn. So when I got that job, Imported from Brooklyn, it made a whole lot of sense to me. What was wonderful to me is that the Lubalin Studio was in a brownstone, and it was like leaving home to go to another home. I mean, this wasn't formal or detached, and it was literally, a studio with a fantastic big reputation, but in terms of employees, it was about 15 to 20 employees. So everybody knew each other, and we each did our thing. It was, as I said, it was like a family.
The way it was set up with our spaces, Tony was in the back, and Tony would walk fast because he had to get to the stat room fast. He had to get to the elevator, and Tony hit the elevator button like it meant something, like you got to get down there fast. And if you saw him in the stat room, he'd come on, I got to get in, I got to get this done. He was like running 110% all the time. We looked at it as a break to go to the stat room. He was said it's part of the swash. You got to continue and go down there and do that. And there was an instance where Herb was having a client come in, and we're in the firehouse at the time on 28th Street, and Tony's in the back. And again, we had the music on, NEWFM, and all of a sudden you hear God damn it, it would happen. Son of a, So Herb, came down one time and says, Tony, can you stop swearing when the client comes in? And Tony goes, Jesus Christ, I gotta get this job done. So Tony swore in response to Herb telling him to be quiet. But you know what? It added so much character.
One of the things I enjoyed doing was executing Tom Carnese's sketches on Spencerian. I really learned my craft, and it was like a relationship of master and apprentice. And that's how I learned to do it, till I got to the point where I was confident in designing my own Spencerian assignments.
Tony, of course, concentrated on a very, very narrow path of a very particular beauty where he became the master of it.
There are many things like you can compare almost to like fashion, right? Like there's certain items of clothing that you can wear over and over again for many, many years, and they're always in fashion. And there's certain things that go out of style very quickly. Design is the same in many ways. For me, maybe Tony's work it's the one that you can always wear for many, many years. Like a black dress or a good pair of jeans. It's timeless. It is.
The timelessness of it is very, very much connected to this mastery of form. I think we all as human beings, not just as designers, as human beings, appreciate something that's really well done. You know, that goes beyond design, we appreciate a goal in soccer that's particularly like, you know, where that's just a feat against gravity. And we, in the same way, we appreciate Tony's calligraphy or typography.
I think there's a fine line between the craft and the actual craftsmanship of doing something and appreciating it. I think Tony's work, it's a mixture of both. You appreciate the ability of anyone who can do this, which is incredible. And then the artwork in itself, the ability or the letter form in itself.
How do you get arranged like that? How do you have a style, a signature style, Spencerian script, the best person in the world, comes out of his hand, and it's timeless? I can't tell when he did it. And you also were a part of establishing design. You're part of establishing what people study in terms of graphic design history. You're part of establishing certain things within people's homes. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
He's changed the way I look at the world, right? Because there's typography, there's design everywhere we go, from the minute we open our eyes in the morning till we close them at night. And you know, through seeing how he worked and his process and his approach, and you know, you can't help but be changed.
A recent project I worked on is the Harry and Meghan royal wedding. I started doing a very small sketch on a Post-it card on the way home on a D train. From there, a rough sketch I blew it up very large, and I took it and put it on my tracing pad, where I started pinning it down further and still further. And I would end up with the final pencil sketch. Once I get to this point, the excitement is over for me, it's done. And the rest is just execution in digitized form on a computer. It's scanned and digitized with me looking over an assistant who's doing the digitizing. And here's a royal couple, and here is the t-shirt with additional t-shirts I designed.
I think Tony took this as an opportunity to not just to teach, but to teach himself, getting reaction from students.
Tony, you already know who I am. Okay. So basically, my entire tools. Pencil for sketching to start. Once I get to a final pencil sketch, the next thing I traditionally execute, and I use a croquis point. I enjoy teaching, and about 20 years ago, I cut down on my professional workload, and I accepted more classes from different schools. And you know, I still did my professional work. See, for example, here you have this large L. You should have a large cap G, and maybe end up with a flourish to balance it all out. And you don't need these little, you know, yeah, you could do without that. It takes away from the integrity of the letter form.
Okay.
If we look at his script, and if we look at the coins for Amsterdam, it was a very, very conscious decision to make that script for the coins beautiful, because the concept needed it, and the experience for the people would be a different one, because we wanted a passersby to have to make a decision. Do I want to keep the piece intact, or do I want to take as many coins as I can carry? And we wanted that to be a more difficult decision by making the piece as beautiful as possible. So in some ways, it was influenced by Tony.
There is some influence of Tony's class that I still bring into my work. I love to experiment with materials when I do designs, cutting paper or something with wood or something with paints. And I think that's a big influence from that particular moment in my education, having him as a teacher.
I think I had already left and we were drinking because we were so happy that the whole thing was done. And I came back in and Tony was there and just saw it. He was moved by what I had put up. So when he was moved by something, you knew it. And I knew that was not easy to do. Like he was not, that it was not an everyday occurrence. So it was special, yeah.
Don't do that. Okay. Forget the box. It sucks. It's terrible. Because you're killing your design.
No, I have a reason. Let me show you my reason. Okay. So let me see.
You can't justify a bad design with reason. I have a reputation for being a tough teacher, which is ridiculous because I don't consider myself a tough teacher. I am demanding. I demand the very best out of my students.
He had this reputation that he was a mean guy that could rip your work apart.
He talked fast and he was very expressive, and he always put his pencil in his mouth and he had the paper flying and all that from the first day.
He would sort of move things around and occasionally rip a little corner here.
You could misunderstand that he was yelling and sometimes he was.
Tony probably less so than other professors didn't really have a lot of time for laziness.
I remember a few phrases that he said in class that were interesting. If we would have too much space between the letters, he would suddenly yell a drive, you can drive a car through those two letters. It's too much space.
Tony would always say, incorporate the obvious when you were designing something.
Think before you sketch, think before you speak, but make sure that you show what you speak, show that work. And that was a big part I think that made an impression on all of us.
I find myself 25 years later that I do explain sometimes kerning to a student, saying it's too much, it's too much of a space. And perhaps I have even said a car could drive through those two letters. So yeah, those things were funny and they stayed.
So this one is one of my favorite sayings to my students in class. A good artist should be able to tell the difference between Dada and doo-doo.
What I had come to understand over time is that he wanted excellence and he was really passionate.
He would let anything through where somebody worked really hard on it and put a lot of love and attention, even if it end result might not have been that great. But if people brought in, things that they did an hour before class, he could get pretty angry at it.
It was tense, but it was a good tense. It was something that I think brought everybody together, and really made you respect, I guess, just the craft of typography, and that I know myself, there wasn't any place I'd rather be. Glad to be able to say at the end of it, I studied with Tony, was one of his students.
I've always believed in the Renaissance idea of an educational system where you have a master and an apprentice relationship. To me, that's still the best working educational system in the world.
So if there was something that you could say to Tony after 50 years of his career, what would you say to him?
I would say thank you.
I would say thank you to Tony Di Spigna. He's giving us a lot.
Probably first say thank you. I don't think I'd be here without him in my life and having such an impact.
Oh, I'm gonna miss you, Tony. Yeah. Sorry. He taught us well. Sorry. It's funny.
Like, you know, he's one of those people who, through his passion and his care, made a difference in many, many people's lives. And that is meaningful. It's a life worth having lived.
So after 50 years of Tony's career, there's nothing that I could offer him in terms of being better about the work. I mean, Tony's a master, but there's one thing that I think that I should have probably told him a long time ago. He's an Italian guy, he wears a French beret. I think he should probably lose that. He could get more respect if he got a fedora. So I don't know whether he's gonna see this, but you know, that's the only advice that I can have, because he's just been amazing in terms of what he's meant to me, not only as a mentor, as a professor, as a model, but also as a peer, as someone who I've worked with. I just respect him so much just for what he has been to the overall graphic design and design profession.
I have a reputation for being a tough teacher, which is ridiculous because I don't consider myself a tough teacher. I am demanding.
And there's certain things that go out of style very quickly.
Could cut that out. And